Hey there, I've got another spooky reads for you tonight. And tonight I'm going to my friend Oscar Wilde. Now, Oscar isn't necessarily best known for horror, right? He's more known for wit and humor. And I love his other work as well. I really love, The Importance of Being Earnest might make the top 10 of my favorite works of literature. It's great fun. But he did write The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is in this. Gosh, this book is heavy. Oof, I should have picked a lighter book to hold up for you guys. But yes, The Picture of Dorian Gray. If you're not familiar with that one, or you don't know it by its title, that's the one where a guy has a painting of himself, and the painting gets all the ill effects of the bad things he does in his life instead of him. And it's one of those, like, be careful what you wish for. Is it a curse or is it a blessing? Kinds of stories. And I'm going to read to you from, I guess, about the middle of the story, from when Dorian is kind of realizing what's going on. And he's breaking up with an actress that he's had a relationship with for a bit, and he's being especially mean about it. And maybe earlier Dorian wouldn't have been this mean. Okay. So he flung himself on the sofa and turned away his face. "You've killed my love," he muttered. She looked at him in wonder and laughed. He made no answer. She came across to him and with her little fingers stroked his hair. She knelt down and pressed his hands to her lips. He drew them away, and a shudder ran through him. Then he leaped up and went to the door. "Yes," he cried, "you've killed my love. You used to stir my imagination. Now you don't even stir my curiosity. You simply produce no effect. I loved you because you were marvelous, because you had genius and intellect, and because you realized the dreams of great poets and gave shape and substance to the shadows of art. You've thrown it all away. You're shallow and stupid. My God, how mad I was to love you. What a fool I have been. You're nothing to me now. I will never see you again. I will never think of you. I will never mention your name. You don't know what you were to me once. Why, once. Oh, I can't bear to think of it. I wish I'd never laid eyes on you. You've spoiled the romance of my life. How little can you know of love if you say it mars your art? Without your art, you're nothing. I would have made you famous, splendid, magnificent. The world would have worshipped you, and you would have borne my name. What are you now? A third-rate actress with a pretty face?" The girl grew white and trembled. She clenched her hands together, and her voice seemed to catch in her throat. "You're not serious, Dorian," she murmured. "You are acting." "Acting? I leave that to you. You do it so well," he answered bitterly. So after this super harsh breakup, can you imagine, like, somebody saying these things to you when you thought everything was going fine, right? He sounds like the villain in a romance novel or something. We follow him as he moves through the city, and there's some really pretty neat imagery describing going through the city, but I'm going to try to limit myself so I don't make my video too long. So I'm going to where he's now back home, and he is maybe feeling a little guilty, and he looks at the painting. So he turned around and walking to the window drew up the... Oh, so sorry, that's not where I meant to start. This is where I meant to start. As he was turning to the handle of the door, his eye fell upon the portrait Basil Hallward had painted of him. He started back as if in surprise. Then he went on into his own room, looking somewhat puzzled. After he had taken the buttonhole out of his coat, he seemed to hesitate. Finally he came back, went over to the picture, and examined it. In the dim, arrested light that struggled through the cream-colored silk blinds, the face appeared to him to be a little changed. The expression looked different. One could have said there was a touch of cruelty in the mouth. It was certainly strange. He turned around and, walking to the window, drew up the blind. The bright dawn flooded the room and swept the fantastic shadows into dusky corners where they lay shuddering. But the strange expression that he had noticed in the face of the portrait seemed to linger there, to be more intensified even. The quivering, ardent sunlight showed him the lines of cruelty round the mouth as clearly as if he'd been looking into a mirror after he had done some dreadful thing. He winced, and taking up from the table an oval glass framed in ivory cupids, one of Lord Henry's many presents to him, glanced hurriedly into its polished depths. No line like that warped his red lips. What did it mean? He rubbed his eyes and came close to the picture and examined it again. There were no signs of any change when he looked into the actual painting, and yet there was no doubt that the whole expression had altered. It was not a mere fancy of his own. The thing was horribly apparent. He threw himself into a chair and began to think. Suddenly there flashed across his mind what he had said in Basil Hallward's studio the day the picture had been finished. Yes, he remembered it perfectly. He had uttered a mad wish that he himself might remain young and the portrait grow old, that his own beauty might be untarnished, and the face on the canvas bear the burden of his passions and his sins, that the painted image might be seared with the lines of suffering and thought, that he might keep all the delicate bloom and loveliness of his then just conscious boyhood. Surely his wish had not been fulfilled. Such things were impossible. It seemed monstrous even to think of them. And yet there was the picture before him, with the touch of cruelty in the mouth. Cruelty. Had he been cruel? It was the girl's fault, not his. He had dreamed of her as a great artist, had given his love to her because he thought her great. Then she disappointed him. She'd been shallow and unworthy. And yet a feeling of infinite regret came over him as he thought of her lying at his feet, sobbing like a little child. He remembered with what callousness he had watched her. Why had he been made like that? Why had such a soul been given to him? But he had suffered also. During the 3 terrible hours that the play had lasted, he had lived centuries of pain, eon upon eon of torture. His life was well worth hers. She had marred him for a moment if he had wounded her for an age. Besides, women were better suited to bear sorrow than men. They lived on their emotions. They only thought of their emotions. When they took lovers, it was merely to have someone with whom they could have scenes. Lord Henry had told him that, and Lord Henry knew what women were. Why should he trouble about Sybil Vane? She was nothing to him now. But the picture, what was he to say of that? It held the secret of his life, and told his story. It had taught him to love his own beauty. Would it teach him to loathe his own soul? Would he ever look on it again? And that's where I'll stop. So I really love the basic concept in this story, right? The idea that, when I turned 50, I remember thinking about the Coco Chanel quote about you get the face you deserve when you're 50. And I get what she means, right? That after 50 years of being a certain kind of person, it's going to show on your face. And if you're somebody who's smiled a lot, then you're going to have lines around your mouth that go with smiling. If you're somebody who's frowned a lot, you're going to have lines around your eyes and around your mouth that show frowning. And so, if you live a life of debauchery and you're cruel to people and nasty, that's going to eventually show in your face. And the idea of how nasty would a person be if they don't have to deal with even those small physical consequences, right? He's already a rich guy, right? He's already privileged. He already can get away with so much. But at the beginning of the story, he's a bit of an innocent. He's a beautiful boy, and he seems to be beautiful inside and out. So the question is, would he have been like this if it hadn't been for the weird magic of the painting? So it's a really interesting story. If you've never read The Portrait of Dorian Gray, you totally should. And like a lot of Oscar Wilde's work, it has a lot of commentary on society and on art and on aesthetics and some quite witty and clever lines. But this one is definitely on the side of a horror story. So happy reading and happy Halloween.